And good morning, David. Good morning. Wake up, David. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Hoops HD's Championship Week video notebook, coming to you here the wee hours of the morning on Friday, March 11th. We just got done with another great, exciting day of college basketball conference tournament action, one of the busiest days of the year for conference tournaments. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. Joining us, John Stalika and David Griggs. Gentlemen, how are you?
Great. It's the Thursday of championship week, and you said it. It's more elimination games today than any other day of the year. So,
Right. And we want you to start out before we actually get to the games. We want to start out discuss the fact that we had our Hoops HD committee meeting today, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up my screen here our actual Hoops HD committee workbook screen. David, can we see it on the screen there?
not yet. It's still there. It is.
Okay.
Hold on. Yeah, it's
There
there.
it
It is. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. This is our actual screen from our Hoops HD committee, our 10-member committee, where we have been doing what the NCAA selection committee is trying to mimic us in doing, and attempting to build out the field of 68. You might have seen it last night. There's been some movement on it. Teams were scrubbed off the under consideration board, as well as at-large bids were awarded. We now have a total of 35 teams in as at-large bids. And we also gave an award out tonight, David.
Yeah, the
Huge award.
Centenary Award. Congratulations to Chicago State, first ever Centenary Award. It was not unanimous. They only had one Division I win, but there was some debate over whether or not their losses were bad enough that they lost to enough bad teams. But that's who got it.
That's who got it. And we have a few other things about this that we want to get to. Correct, David?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't. No.
Well, actually, before we get to, we're going to get to your tweet about this, but before we get to that, actually, I'm the chairman of our Hoops HD selection committee. It was my job to take down the minutes of today's meeting, and I want to just fill in for everybody what those minutes were. So let me pull them up here. I'm just going to read them off. I'd like to get them on the screen, but I don't think we can. But at least read them off here. Our meeting actually started at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern. Our first order of business was that, David, you made a motion.
Well, yeah. I wanted to motion Nebraska onto the board.
Yeah, that was not seconded.
What's so funny about that?
That was 9:05 p.m. 9:06 p.m. We needed to stop and wait for David to stop yelling.
My motion. I shouldn't have to make motion.
Now then, at 9:11
p.m. to be here anyway.
9:11 p.m. David made another motion to get Nebraska on, which also was not seconded.
Well, I don't even know why I have to make motions.
9:16 p.m. You made a motion for a third time to try to get Nebraska on.
Well, yeah. Well, because you didn't pass the first two.
At 9:20,
I wouldn't have done it had you passed one of the first two.
At 9:20, John actually made a motion for us to make it so that David was no longer allowed to motion Nebraska onto the board. That motion was seconded and in fact carried by a 9-1 score. The only dissenter was David.
Yeah. Well. I don't understand. Well, how do you not take a team? First of all, Tim Miles is the coach. Secondly, they're in a position to win the Big Ten tournament and then make it to the NCAA tournament. They've won at Michigan State, and tonight they won at Wisconsin.
And then 9:30, we actually motioned to remove David from the room altogether.
Yeah, and I don't know what happened after that. But in looking at the board, you still don't have Nebraska in.
No, they are still not in. They are not even under consideration. You will need two other people to even get them under consideration and then vote them in, David. It's not going to happen.
In fact, if you look at the under consideration board here, we actually have teams on the right-hand column that have already finished all their games. So the teams on the left-hand side of the column, they still have a chance to improve their profile. So these are the more likely teams to be voted into the remaining spots that will open up.
Nebraska is not in either column.
John Hutch has a color-coded version of the board for us there, so a little more easy to look at. So if you want to take a look at his screen there, but after all of that, David, though, we did get, like we showed on the board there, we do have 35 teams in, and I believe we wanted to get to our tweet of the night next before we actually move on to our going through the games for the day. Correct?
Well, sure, why not? Let's do that. And again, this is correspondence, and it's between us and the selection chair committee, Joe Castiglione, and we'll just pull that up here. And again, we've been doing this all throughout championship week. From the first night when I think it was the Patriot League that kicked off, we've been corresponding with him every night. It's been a one-way correspondence for the most part, but here it is. It's just what we are doing here is. Let's see here.
There it is. It is attached.
Okay. Yes. It's attached. I'm sorry, and it just says, here's what the Hoops HD committee has done, so you can compare and contrast with what you're doing. And this is going straight to Joe Castiglione. This way, he'll see our board, and it's just kind of a cross-reference check. Wouldn't you agree? So he can maybe look at what we're doing and then say, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't have done that. The Hoops HD guys didn't do that. So there it is. We're
exactly. For example, if they have Cincinnati or South Carolina in, we do not have those teams in quite yet, so they should not have them in yet. If they do not have an Oregon State or a Pitt in, we did bring those teams in this week, tonight. Wichita State also made the field tonight here, so Wichita State should be in their bracket as well at this point in time.
Yeah. So again, it's just so they can cross-reference it, see whatever, get another perspective on it.
Absolutely. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and pull up the screen share again and actually begin running through the conferences of the games tonight.
Yeah.
And let's start out in the ACC, because why not? Let's start there, where we had 4 games today. Probably the best game of the night was this afternoon game was the Notre Dame Duke game, 84-79 Duke win in overtime. David.
Yeah, this one went back it was actually Notre Dame that won.
But that's what I said. 84-79
Notre Dame win
in overtime.
Yeah.
Yeah. Duke won. They play North Carolina tomorrow. They're only 8 miles apart.
Oh, is that what happened? Okay, yeah. Notre Dame, they're not always good, but it seems like they're always good when they play against the state of North Carolina. They read a stat today that was amazing. They've won 9 of their last 11 against teams from North Carolina. And they knocked Duke out last year. They knocked Duke out again this year. Notre Dame actually won the championship last year, so they've been very successful. They went forever without being in a conference tournament or winning a conference tournament. They like winning the ACC, though.
John, we've got the top 4 seeds now into the semifinals tomorrow: North Carolina, Notre Dame, Virginia, Miami. What do you see in these games tomorrow?
Yeah, let's not forget that Miami and Virginia is also a worthy game. It's not one that you would call an undercard right here. Miami won the first matchup in Coral Gables, or rather the most recent matchup, so at least Virginia will probably have a shot to get revenge right here, but I could also see North Carolina and Chalk holding up on the top end of the bracket as well.
Yeah, and just real quick, 2 teams that lost today, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, they were not in our bracket, and I don't see how losing gets them in. So I don't know. I'm not big on either one of them. I think some people on our committee are, but I'm not among them.
I don't know that they're going to make it in, and I don't think that the real committee, when they see what we do, will put them in either.
Right, yes.
They had their chances, but they couldn't cash them in.
Right.
We also had quarterfinal day today in the Big 12, and although we had some thrilling games between Kansas and Kansas State and West Virginia TCU, really not much in terms of competitive games. Even the Oklahoma-Iowa State game was not as close as that final score was. Iowa State made a late run to try to make it close. But David, we're setting up Baylor, Kansas, West Virginia, Oklahoma tomorrow, and we're still only in the semifinal round.
Right. Baylor, Kansas is interesting. I can't help but think that Kansas is just going to wipe them up, though. But the West Virginia, Oklahoma game might be really good. Both are protected seeds. It's possible that they're both going to be 2 seed or better. So really Elite 8 caliber game going on there in a conference tournament.
Yeah, and whoever wins these 2 games is going to have to play another really tough game the next night. You may want to think that it's not that great to win 8, as we saw with Iowa State last year.
Right.
On the other hand, Kansas and Oklahoma are both vying for 1 seeds, and West Virginia let's not count them out if they're able to beat both Oklahoma and Kansas en route to the Big 12 title.
That's assuming a lot, but let's assume a lot. Let's assume they beat both Oklahoma and Kansas. To beat both those teams on a neutral floor. West Virginia's profile is going to look amazing if that happens. I don't know if they're all the way up on the one line, but it's a really, really good profile.
Well, and let's not forget West Virginia already beat Kansas once this year.
Yeah,
and it could happen, especially if some of these other teams we're talking from other conferences do fall down. And this is one of those conferences, the Big East that I have on the screen now, John, where we saw Villanova, Providence, Xavier, Seton Hall, mostly cruise. Seton Hall did have a good game with Creighton, pulled it out, unlike your prediction last night. So, but let me throw it out there to you. What do you think about these two semifinals tomorrow? Villanova, Providence, Xavier, Seton Hall.
Well, Villanova didn't have the easiest time either. They were actually nip and tuck with Georgetown for most of the way until they started pulling away with about 6 minutes left. I still think Providence, this is actually a rematch from last year's semifinal. They'll have one more chance to get a real signature win besides the win they already got at Villanova. But I still think it's going to be Villanova and Seton Hall advancing to the championship for Saturday night.
Wow, our Xavier guy just picked against Xavier. We'll make sure to edit that. You're picking the podcast there when your Xavier friends listen to it, John.
It's called the reverse jinx.
Okay. Yeah. So, David, we also had definitely the biggest upsets of the day took place today in the Big Ten, where we were actually only in the second round, but we had. After Michigan survived somehow, keeping their postseason hopes alive in overtime against Northwestern, we saw Illinois amazingly knock off Iowa.
Yeah.
Penn State gave Ohio State a tough game.
Right.
And something happened in the nightcap, too, that we don't really care about.
Well, yeah, I mean, not that big. I mean, you said two big upsets. I don't really think Michigan over Northwestern is that much of an upset. Michigan was actually the better seeded team. But, yes, Illinois over Iowa, that was a big upset. But other than that, chalk pretty much held.
Yeah, Nebraska not only beating Wisconsin but dominating them. David, you fully expected that, of course.
Oh, absolutely. No. But absolutely, yes. That really was remarkable, and it just goes to show you that, I mean, you don't want to question Tim Miles. He will crush the non-believers. Whiskey didn't believe. Look what happened to him.
We now have quarterfinals tomorrow. Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Purdue, Ohio State, Michigan State, Maryland, Nebraska. 4 teams that are squarely in the NCAA tournament, 4 teams that are on the bubble or worse.
Right.
Maybe the most important game, though, John, is this Michigan-Indiana game, really. I mean, I think Michigan needs this game if they want to make the big dance.
Yeah, as I alluded to last night, Michigan need to set the table against Northwestern, and they've done step number 1, but now they have to get a signature win against Indiana to at least put themselves in a much better position. I can't guarantee that would get them voted into the field, but it would certainly enhance their chances. But don't sleep on Illinois to possibly upset Purdue, because they've already been able to pull it off once this year.
Wow, he's picking Illinois over Purdue. David, what about this Ohio State team? We haven't really discussed them in a while here. They did have a fairly good record overall in the Big Ten, although quite possibly because of unbalanced schedules.
Yeah.
If they can pick up this win tomorrow over Michigan State, do we have to start taking them pretty seriously?
I think we have to look at them, but I mean, first of all, I just don't think they're good enough to beat Michigan State. If Michigan State shows up, you see it a lot of the times in these quarterfinal rounds, teams that are already safely in or protected seeds, they're not playing for the same thing. Ohio State is playing to continue their season, and maybe winning the tournament or winning a couple games in it are their only way in. Whereas if Michigan State's playing just for a little more gravy, and if they lose, they just get a couple days off. So the teams are not at all in similar mindsets or situations coming in. Now, having said that, Ohio State can't beat Michigan State, I don't think, if Michigan State shows up.
That was a wise move on Chad's part to bring up the unbalanced scheduling in the Big Ten, because apparently that's a touchy issue with Roy Williams in North Carolina.
Oh well, whatever.
Um,
What did he say about it?
Horses and something that rhymed with spit.
Okay.
okay. John, we had quarterfinal day today in the Pac-12 where chalk pretty much held. Really, once again, nothing. I mean, I guess the Arizona and Colorado game ended up being fairly close. We actually had a pretty good game. We just finished watching Cal knocking off Oregon State. But what do you see tomorrow in these two semifinals?
We also had a good game with Oregon and Washington, but the Ducks wound up moving on. I think Arizona can get revenge against Oregon because they probably needed a little bit more in terms of shaping up what has been a somewhat middle-heavy profile, not top-heavy. But I think Utah is also going to win the bottom half of the bracket as well.
David, we saw both Oregon State and USC go down today. Do you think that either team is in trouble now with these losses?
Not particularly. I mean, I think a win would have put them in, maybe even into the initial ballot, but I don't think any of them are in that much trouble. Oregon State looked really good, and I've been pretty harsh on them for their lack of production away from home. They were playing a really good team today. They had a chance to win it. If they had won it, it would have been you'd have to turn the clock way, way, way back to find the last time they won a game like that, because essentially they would have beaten a solid tournament team away from home and cemented a spot in the tournament themselves and advanced to the semifinals of the conference tournament. But no, I don't. As big as it would have been, I don't think they're really in that much danger.
I'd agree with you. We also had today, it was second round day in the SEC, heading into the quarterfinals coming up tomorrow, where we saw one of the bigger upsets of the day, actually, probably the biggest upset outside of the Big Ten, with Tennessee knocking off Vanderbilt, a Vanderbilt team that was pretty much heading right towards the NCAA tournament, probably only needed to win this game, could have even afforded to lose tomorrow to LSU, and now suddenly very squarely back on the bubble, if not on the wrong side of it, David.
Yeah, right. And it wasn't like a win would have put them in as much as a loss kind of knocks them out. This is a really bad Tennessee team. And it's a team that Vandy absolutely destroyed when they faced them in the regular season. A real surprising result for a Vandy team that needed to come into this tournament, treating it like they had a lot to lose and a lot to gain. And they lost a lot.
We also saw, John, we saw Florida get a win today, Georgia, Alabama as well. Any of those three teams, do you think those three teams can still make the field, or how much more do they have to do?
Well, South Carolina is definitely going to have to figure out Georgia soon because our mock committee has not voted in the Gamecocks yet. That's not to say that they won't get in, but they're certainly in a position where they're going to be sweating a lot if they're not able to beat Georgia. But would it be enough for the Bulldogs to beat South Carolina 3 times? We'll have to see on that.
David, do you think Tennessee can keep it going tomorrow against LSU?
Yeah, I don't think they will, but that's because I think so little of LSU, not because I think a lot of Tennessee. I don't think they'll beat LSU, but I think it wouldn't shock me if they did.
What about Kentucky or A&M? You think either one of them go down?
No.
Okay. That was easy, nice and easy. John, today was also the second round day in the Atlantic 10. The top 4 teams here still have not yet got into action. We saw Richmond, GW, Davidson, and UMass a decent game over against Rhode Island, where Rhode Island actually made a real big comeback, and then UMass finally held on to win it. Setting up quarterfinals tomorrow. Maybe that St. Joe's GW game is the biggest one to circle.
Oh. That's the biggest one in terms of 2 bubblish teams playing against one another and in some respects acting as a possible elimination game. But VCU and St. Bonaventure are 2 other teams that they better win tomorrow if they want to remain under consideration.
Yeah.
David, do you see any upsets here tomorrow from Richmond, Davidson, or UMass?
I don't think so. Dayton has had to sweat out a lot of games, and again, they're one of those teams that's probably pretty safe, so they're not coming in with the threat of their season ending if they don't win. But I'm not really seeing much here that leads me to think there's any real upsets. VCU is no, in short, no.
I'm sorry, we just lost the screen there on it because the next one popped up. Our controllers are moving us along here. But in the American Conference today, we actually saw two entertaining games, albeit meaningless ones, between South Florida and Tulane both winning. Tulane actually winning at Central Florida there. But David, we've got the huge game here coming up tomorrow afternoon, Cincinnati UConn. Maybe the most important game of the day tomorrow.
It probably is for two reasons. Both these teams right on the bubble. They need a notable win to get one against a team that's in the same situation you are. To give yourself that win and to deny the other team a win is huge. But the second part of that is that assuming Temple wins, and that's a pretty safe assumption, you get another shot the next day. So huge game tomorrow for two teams that really need to do more. And the loser of this game is done. They're not going to do anymore.
And this is a bracket that's pretty top-heavy right here with Temple, Cincinnati, and UConn on one side, and then Houston and Tulsa on the other half.
Yeah, John, do you see an upset there by Tulane or Memphis on the bottom side there?
It's kind of tempting to pick Memphis because they have beaten Tulsa, but I wouldn't count on Lightning striking twice there. And I certainly wouldn't count on Lightning striking Temple with so much at stake for the Owls, especially after they missed out on the tournament last season.
I would not be totally shocked if South Florida at least hung with the Owls. Temple's had some very puzzling losses this year, and this would kind of be part of their MO if they had another one tomorrow.
Yeah.
Mountain West today, we had the quarterfinal round action. Real entertaining game between Nevada and New Mexico in the 4-5 game there, and San Diego State sweated out Utah State before they picked up the win.
Yeah, all these games were pretty entertaining. Good day of basketball out in Vegas in 4 different tournaments, really. We're going to get to all of them. But, yeah, San Diego State almost went goodbye. I mean, it was off to the NIT. There would have been they would have probably been voted off consideration had they added yet another loss, as bad as that would have been. And it was not easy. I mean, it was a 5-point win. It wasn't a last-second shot, but it was one of those situations to where with 30 seconds to go, either team was still in a position to win.
You can tell this is late at night because David Griggs now thinks that Reno is within the city limits of Las Vegas.
Well, we'll get to that.
The West Coast. Well, the West Coast is over.
Yeah. The semifinals tomorrow, though, John. San Diego State, Nevada, Fresno State, Colorado State, who also pulled off an upset, knocking off a Boise State team that I think a couple of us actually thought would win this league. Do you think San Diego State and Fresno make the finals, or do you see an upset?
I could see San Diego State and Colorado State making it to the finals, but it wouldn't terribly shock me if Nevada wound up advancing either, given that this is a year that's not been kind to one seeds in conference tournaments at all.
Well, since David wanted to go to Reno here and calling it part of Vegas, let's go ahead and talk about what happened in Reno.
Call it part of Vegas.
The Big Sky tournament in Reno tonight. Quarterfinal round action, and Weber State, the 1 seed, really had to sweat out Portland State.
Oh boy, yeah, they did. I mean, again, that was one of the better games. I mean, that was a really entertaining game. Also, the one we just got done watching, Idaho beating Eastern Washington. I'm trying to remember the last time Idaho advanced past the quarterfinals of this tournament, and I can't.
Well, because they've only been in this tournament for 2 years since they returned to the Big Sky recently. That would explain it. Yeah. But I think this Idaho-Montana game tomorrow has a chance to be a really good one. I expect Weber to roll over North Dakota. I think they had their scare.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Let's move on to let's go over to the Mid-American Conference next, and this was also another conference that was in the quarterfinal round today, where we had 4 games, and we kind of laughed at the upset when it happened the other day, but John, it happened again. Bowling Green now on to the semifinals, the 12 seed, We have an 8 seed. We have a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament already. Do we have a 12 seed waiting to make the big dance?
It certainly could happen because Akron was very lucky to survive against Eastern Michigan because they were also down double digits in the second half of that one, much to the horror of the natives up in Cleveland. Although Chalk did hold up in the bottom half of the bracket with both Ohio and Buffalo/New York advancing to the semifinals.
David, do you see the Bowling Green upset tomorrow?
No, but I need to qualify that by saying I did not see Akron struggling against Eastern Michigan the way they did today. It was more than a struggle. I'll go so far to say is that they were lucky to get that win.
Well, I'll tell you that I thought the 3 best teams in this conference this season were Akron, Central Michigan, and Kent State. And Bowling Green's just run through 2 of those 3, so I wouldn't be shocked at all if Akron won again. I'm sorry, if Akron lost here.
Oh, I would not be shocked if Akron won again either.
I wouldn't be shocked if Bowling Green won here, knocked off Akron as well. Conference USA today. We actually had one really good game here at the end of the night, but we also had one of the biggest upsets of the day, David, as UAB, the 1 seed, punched their ticket to the NIT.
Yeah, and again, Western Kentucky had beaten them during the regular season, albeit it was at Western Kentucky. The 2 played last year in the quarterfinals with UAB winning by just a point. So, I mean, although it was a 1 versus 8 game, you had reason to think that UAB was going to have trouble in this one, but they had more than just trouble. They just got absolutely run over, and it was kind of shocking to me to see a team that played so well all season long, really only lost 2 conference games, be in their home city and get destroyed. Not just beat, but it was 20 points. I think UAB closed it up a little bit to make the score look more respectable than what the margin really was. But, Western Kentucky just pounded them. And you almost wondered, where was that all year from the Hilltoppers?
Yeah, John, we had a great game between Marshall and UTEP that Marshall pulled out in the last second there. We got an interesting game tomorrow, Marshall, Middle Tennessee. Do you think that game is basically the de facto championship game here?
I'm not going to say that as long as Western Kentucky is still alive and well in the other half of the brackets.
Yeah.
But I do think
West Kentucky, a heck of a history winning Sun Belt tournament after tournament, no matter how lousy they were.
Right. They won it in back-to-back years with losing conference records.
So maybe they're doing it in Conference USA now. I want to talk about exciting finishes. Over in the Southland today, where we were in the second round or quarterfinal round game, Sam Houston State, Nicholls State. It was an amazing finish. Nicholls took a lead with about 3 seconds left, and then Sam Houston beat them with half a second left.
2 last-second shots right back to back. It was pretty nuts.
But we move on now, David, to Houston Baptist versus SFA, Sam Houston State versus Corpus Christi. Do you see an upset in the top game, or is it just we're just going to have an exciting game at the bottom?
Houston Baptist playing, I think, in their first ever Southland tournament. Houston Baptist getting their first ever tournament win. They've never ever lost a conference tournament game, but I do think they lose tomorrow in the Southland. But I do think they lose tomorrow.
And it's become a recent conference bylaw that SFA and Sam Houston State have to face each other in the championship.
That might very well happen again. It's happened several times here. Yeah. John, the MEAC today, we had a pair with the third and the fourth quarterfinals as Savannah State got by Bethune-Cookman, and South Carolina State held off a huge late run by Coppin State to advance. 1, 2, 3, and 5. We are not used to seeing this high seed numbers in the MEAC semifinal round, are we?
This is bizarro world in terms of the MEAC right here.
Yeah, and it's bizarre word in college basketball because a lot's being made about how I believe still currently only one overall first place finisher has gone on to win the conference tournament. And in that same year, the MEAC has chalk holding. The basement is in the attic, folks.
Let's move on. A few more games that were played today. We had the we had a couple of semifinals a couple quarterfinals in the SWAC as well today, as Southern took care of Alabama State. Jackson State rolled over Prairie View, setting up David, Texas Southern versus Southern.
Yeah.
One of the top rivalries in the SWAC in one semifinal. Jackson State against Mississippi Valley in the other.
Yeah. I mean, a couple rivalries here, but yeah, the Texas Southern game should be fun. And do we have a stream of this?
No, we do not.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And we were checking religiously today to make sure to see if it would be added at the last second, but alas, no such luck.
Nope. I did correspond by email with the SWAC offices. They only streamed the first 2 days, so today. So the second day of quarterfinals and the semifinals will not be streamed. We will get to watch the championship on TV coming up on Saturday night on ESPNU. John, we also today in the Sun Belt we had the, I guess we call this the quarterfinal round or the first round, the opening round. South Alabama knocks off Georgia Southern, Texas State knocking off Georgia State, moving on to play Lafayette and Arlington respectively. Any thoughts on what you saw here today?
It's another ladder format that should be favorable to Little Rock and you would think Louisiana Monroe when they start play tomorrow, but I think Texas Arlington and Lafayette should be able to move on without too much of a problem.
Yeah, interesting conference this year. Georgia State and UT Arlington got off to great starts and had horrible finishes.
Yeah, Georgia State, their season is now over after pretty much collapsing here. David, the Big West Conference, quarterfinal round day here, and another conference that we're used to seeing upsets in, and chalk held.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like they have the updates there yet, but Santa Barbara getting it done. Hawaii only led by a point at the half, and again, C.S. Fullerton was so happy with what they did in the first half that they just decided to call it a day and not come out for the second.
Yeah, 75-44. The finals are up there. The matchups are not. It is a reseeding, but it's not going to matter because of the chalk holding. So we're going to have Hawaii and UC Santa Barbara will be the early game tomorrow. Long Beach and UC Irvine will be the late game tomorrow.
Yeah.
That Long Beach team is a team that I picked to win this conference tournament. So keep an eye on that game. That could be a good one. Mm-hmm. Last but not least, certainly not least, the WAC started today, and first game came out there, David, and I saw UMKC come out to take the court. I said, okay, Grand Canyon's going to come out and play them. Didn't happen. Utah Valley came out.
Right.
Second game, Chicago State came out. I said, okay, here comes Grand Canyon.
And this is where they should have been. That was their seed.
And Bakersfield came out instead. The third game started, and out came Rio Grande Valley. I said, okay, now we're going to see the Lopes. And since Seattle came out.
Yeah.
So I started waiting for the fourth game. Obviously, Grand Canyon, New Mexico State. I don't know why. It's a very straight format to have your top two seeds play in the quarters.
But
it didn't happen. Apparently, I guess, I don't understand what happened. Did New Mexico State forfeit? Maybe that's what's going on here.
No, they did not give the Lopes the waiver. I mean, they just didn't get. I mean, that's what it's looking like to me. They didn't listen to.
Well, you know what? I'm looking here at the bracket now, and I see we've got New Mexico State, UMKC, Bakersfield, and Seattle tomorrow. Saturday, the winners of those games play.
Yeah.
I think there's just another mistake here on CBS.
Well, that's because Grand Canyon is supposed to play the winner on Sunday, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Grand Canyon on Sunday the 13th will play the winner of that game. They gave Grand Canyon a triple bye into the championship.
Okay. They were the second place team. That's kind of odd that they would do that.
But they're the Lopes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess.
God, they're the Lopes.
Okay, yeah.
So, obviously, the Lopes waiver movement is still alive. Grand Canyon will be playing the champion. Could very easily play the winner of the Saturday game on Sunday.
Are you sure about this? Because, we were sure before. I was certain that the Lopes were going to get the waiver. And then the bracket came out and they weren't in it. You remember how upset I was.
I know how much, but that's going to be the only possible solution because we spoke to Jeff Hurd, the commissioner of the WAC. We spoke to Mark Emmert twice.
Yes. Right.
It's got to be. We petitioned to President Obama.
Yes, we did.
That's got to be the only solution that I can see.
Right.
But John, as far as these two games, as we play out on towards a potential game against the Lopes on Sunday, your thoughts on these two games tomorrow?
I think we may wind up seeing the exact same championship we had last year, and that's going to be New Mexico State and Seattle, although there's going to be a huge asterisk next to the word championship this year.
It's only a semifinal on Saturday. This is quarterfinal round tomorrow.
Maybe they seeded by RPI.
Yeah, that could have been it. That's why the Lopes were the one
Right.
seed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe that's it.
You could definitely be right there. On that note, though, let's go ahead and pull this down here, and I guess we're on to our survival board, unless we forgot something here. I think that's it for everything I've got, at least.
Okay, let's pull it up here, and busy day. So let's unpack this a minute here. There's 76 teams coming into the day. Virginia Tech still in italics. I don't know if they're going to be. I don't know. I haven't seen it updated yet, but.
Actually, the updates are now going to be matching in terms of what's under italics, what our committee is doing.
Okay, yeah.
So Virginia Tech is still technically on the under consideration board there that we saw a few minutes ago. Still going to be under italics for today. Come tomorrow, we may clean that up a bit with our committee, and hopefully we'll see teams like that falling off.
Yeah, Monmouth's still there. You mentioned the Lopes still on there. So, but yeah, I mean, a lot of teams. I would imagine a lot of teams are coming off today. So
well, let's see what happened.
Okay, let's hit the. And we're down to 130. It looks like 130 teams, and yeah, Virginia Tech's still there. So
yeah, we're gonna clean that up tomorrow when our committee meets again. A few of those teams like Virginia Tech and see other teams here and along the lines of a Creighton that probably are going to come off.
Yeah.
In addition to teams that lose tomorrow, but you can see that a lot of teams did come off. But David, I'm not willing to take the Lopes off yet. I will not.
Well, I mean, I'm starting to have reason to hope again that after hearing that explanation.
But there's no reason you can't do it. I mean, the selection show is not till 5:30. You could play a 3:00 game on Sunday. That's noon Vegas time. Lopes versus New Mexico State or Seattle or whoever wins that game Saturday, and that's who your automatic bid goes to. Makes sense.
They can also play it at 11 o'clock in the morning Pacific time, to at least give the committee a little bit of a chance to prepare contingency brackets.
Yeah. You don't need a contingency brackets. You just got the Lopes. Doesn't matter where they go. They're the Lopes.
Right.
But on that note, any other thoughts about what we saw today? David, let me start with you.
Not so much on what we saw today, just another busy day. A couple things about our mock committee. I really like a Hofstra team that I don't think anybody else on the committee likes. I really like this Hofstra team, and I'm starting to like them more and more. They had the win at St. Bonaventure. They tied for first. They had two really good road wins in conference that seemed to me, relative to the rest of the bubble, better than anything else, especially the teams that did nothing other than, beat up on teams at home, like weaker teams. So first thought there. Secondly, be sure you're checking our site every day. Our selection committee guessing expert John Teitel has been updating his bracket every day. That's the one we're going off of as far as guessing what the real committee is going to do. That and of course our correspondence with them. So be checking that. We're not going to do that tonight, but probably tomorrow night and certainly on Saturday night we're going to be taking a close look at his bracket along with what the committee's doing, and hopefully we can get him on, although he wasn't able to be on the night, probably because it's 3 in the morning. And third, Chad, you forgot to mention St. Louis today. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it is my understanding that St. Louis lost their game today and fired Jim Cruz before the post-game press conference.
At least Rutgers, who let Eddie Jordan go today, they waited till after the post-game press conference.
Right. I mean, couldn't wait till the team got back to campus? Good God.
But John, David just told us how much he likes a team with 5 sub-100 losses. So any final thoughts, though, on the night?
We have some good news if you're a fan of a bubble team. We had 4 spots guaranteed to open up based on results of the ACC, the Big East, the Big 12, and the Pac-12. So we will have 5 at-large spots to fill out, and it could be more depending on how the Big Ten, the SEC, the American, and the Atlantic 10 shape up. But I wouldn't count on the American and the Atlantic 10 for sure opening up an at-large spot, or even the SEC for that matter.
I was going to say, you may not want to count on the SEC either with some of the stuff that's going on, and there's been some craziness in the Big Ten also so far. My final thought here is next year we're doing this Championship Week video notebooks. We're going to have one additional conference tournament we're discussing. The news came out today. The Ivy League is adopting a conference tournament beginning next year. It's going to be a 4-team event played at the Palestra. David, I know you love it.
This is the first I've heard of the details. I hate it that it's not at campus sites, but I love the Palestra.
It's at one campus site.
It is at one campus site.
You know what? If your tournament is at the Palestra, that's okay.
The old site of the A10 tournament, I remember those days well. But the Ivy League tournament, men and women both coming. That's going to be played Saturday and Sunday of Championship Week. So yet another final on Championship on Selection Sunday. But we'll see that next year. But as far as this year goes, Yale was the final regular season 14-game tournament champion. But we've got a lot of games tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow night with an update of the games and where our selection committee is and where the real selection committee should be, and maybe even a slightly better cleaned up survival board. But for David Griggs and John Sleek, I'm Chad Sherwood. Have a great night, everybody.